Before we begin any unit, I want you first to think about school. I want you to think about the purpose of school. Why are you here? What is school for? Why do we have it? Why do people consider it so important that kids go to school? And it is not daycare. You are here for a reason. Take a moment to make a list of what you think the purpose of school is. Take a look at your list, or recall the list you just made. Did your list include the most important aspect of school, of an education? Now here's a clue of what it should have included. What school do you go to? Ripon what? Ripon Christian. Did anything on your list, did any item on your list include that aspect? If not, consider it when doing this next activity. Now you have listed reasons that we go to school, why people should get an education. Now to achieve those goals, those purposes, you need rules. There has to be some kind of a structure, some kind of a system that helps us to attain those goals. One aspect of that is rules, or our rules. So I need you to make a list of rules that you think our class should have so that we are more likely to attain those purposes that you just listed. Now for my rules, the rules that I propose. In order for me to be an effective teacher, which will benefit you as an individual, and because of that, society in general, I need to know certain aspects of your lives so that I may tailor my instruction appropriately. Because your academic success and behavior are affected by your family life, social life, and individual habits, many of my proposed rules will require you to willingly give up some information pertaining to those factors. Furthermore, studies have shown that physical health is linked to academic success. Those that exercise and eat well perform well academically. And in addition to all of that, because you attend a Christian school, knowing about certain interests you have will help me help you develop spiritually. Therefore, the following rules, based on what we know about the significance of a family life, social life, and individual habits, have been created to promote good behavior and academic success. The rules I propose are: 1. You must be home every weekday night by 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. on weekends. Please give me a list of the television shows you watch and the music you listen to. I'll let you know which ones are allowed. Please get me a list of your friends. If you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, report to me who he or she is and how you met. Also, provide me with a paragraph description of your relationship with each friend and family member. Next, I would like a list of what food that you eat each day. This must be reported daily. I will let you know what you may or may not continue to eat. Please give me a report on everything that you will do or did after school, in the afternoon, the evening, and night. This includes weekends. Please include the names of the people you hung out with. This too must occur daily. And finally, provide me a list of your usernames and passwords to all of your social media accounts. Consider the rules that I just proposed, and then record your thoughts on my rules. And if you oppose them, please briefly explain why. Shockingly, no one really thinks that my rules are good, despite the excellent reasons given. So, the reasons that you think my rules are bad, where did those ideas come from? They don't just come from nothing. They have to come from somewhere. Please take a moment to record where your ideas came from that claim my rules are bad. So the purpose of this exercise will be made clear at the end of this video. Right now, let's consider these two questions. What is history, and why study history? First, what is history? History is not only the study of the past, it is not only the cause and effect, the chronological sequence of events. It is not only the ideas, actions, and events that have shaped the present and sets a course for the future. History is not made up of chance, or fate, or luck. History is much more. It is His story. It is God's providential dealings with man that includes creation, the fall, redemption, and reconciliation. History, guided by the sovereign hand of God, is the story of man and his relationship with his Creator. It is God's sovereign control and our relationship with Him that gives meaning to history. And so it is important for you to know that you are part of this story, just as much as Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the disciples, and Paul. Now let's look at the question, why study history? Looking at this slide here, if I were to ask you to read the first line to me, you would say 8:59. And I would ask you, what is that? And you would tell me it's a time. And I would ask, well, how do you know it's a time? How do you know that when those symbols and characters are arranged in that particular way, it indicates a time? Well, at some point in your past, you learned that. And so that's how you interpret it in the present. Look at the next line. If I were to have you read that, most of you would say 1859. What is 1859? Well, it's a date. Again, how do you know it's a date? Well, at some point in your past, you learned when numbers were arranged that way, it represents a date, a time in history, a time of the past. Look at the number 1. Simple. People would read that as 1. How do you know it's a 1? Same reasons. The next one, 11. You read it as 11. You don't read it as 1, 1. If someone were to read that in class as 1, 1, people would chuckle. Because in the past, we learned that when you put two ones together, it is called an 11. The next one, 911. Again, I don't know, several decades ago, if a student were to say 911 instead of 911, they'd be laughed at. But because of something in the past where that had become the emergency number, saying 911 today would be considered perfectly fine and normal. And last, we have 9/11, something that prior to September 11, 2001 would have been associated simply with September 11. But now, that symbol has taken on a whole new meaning. And again, the reason has to do with history. Something that happened in the past has now shaped what we understand and how we understand things in the present. This brings us to a book titled I, Rigoberta Menchú. This is an autobiography. It is an account of this lady's growing up in Guatemala, and she expresses in this book of being oppressed because she was a woman. The book leans towards Marxism and radical feminism, and it happened to win the Nobel Prize in the 1990s. David Stoll, who read the book when he was a student in college, was working on his doctorate in Guatemala when he found himself in a village where he recalled, based on this book, the author's brother being tortured and burned to death. So he began asking the villagers about that event. He got blank stares. He investigated even further, asked more pressing questions, and people were denying any of this stuff. And so he dug into this issue, into this alleged event, and discovered that the whole book was a fraud. It was a lie. And so he wrote his own book countering that book. Now, during this controversy, a professor was asked about this because this particular professor required the reading of this book. And she said, whether her book is true, I don't care. What is important is that we teach our students about the horrors of capitalism. Now, why would she say this? Why would she not care if the book is true or not? It's because she wants people to believe certain things in the present. And one of the most effective ways to do that is to rewrite the past. This shows you that what you believe in the present is determined by the past. If teachers, universities, colleges, certain institutions can change the historical context, they can change how you view the present. If you rewrite history, you can make people believe whatever you want in the present. This rewriting of the past is called historical revisionism. And historical revisionism can be good or bad. It depends. It's good when new evidence surfaces that gives people a more complete and whole picture of what happened. It's bad when this revisionism is a result of ideology when it's a result of wanting people to believe and think a certain way in the present? Could someone make a strong claim and argument that this is happening now with our postmodern society, with so-called cultural Marxism and critical theory, identity politics, and what's going on now with BLM, Antifa, and the 1619 Project? It's certainly something to consider. The exercise at the beginning, when you were asked to evaluate my proposed rules, you had reasons you opposed them, and I asked where those ideas came from. By now you should realize that past events, experiences, and education are among the reasons for why you opposed my rules. It was to help show you that the past, and what you know about the past, shapes how and what you think in the present. And so, why study history is linked to how one sees history. It seems today that many people suffer from historical myopia. That is, they are too nearsighted when considering history. They fail to see the larger story. They fail to see God's story. Sadly, if history begins with you, then you'll lead a shallow, self-centered life, one void of understanding and meaning, one incapable of answering the question, why are we here? This myopia is the result of postmodernism's denial of God and today's cultural rejection of meta-narratives. Thus, if there is no larger story, no absolute truth, if reason and God are rejected, then everyone tells their own story. Everyone has their own truth system, and history becomes a tool we can use to change minds and opinions to get people to think a certain way in the present, often for the purpose of getting certain public policies enacted. Cancel culture, anyone? Defund the police? We are not to have a myopic view of history. You are not here to just graduate from high school, go to college, get a job, and start a family. Those things are all good, of course, but you have a much deeper and profound purpose: to love God and enjoy Him fully, to transform all spheres of life, to affect all areas of life, to push all areas of life into or towards God's kingdom, to play your part, to play your role in making society and all that it is a part of reflect the love, justice, and creativity of our Lord and Savior by loving our neighbors, seeking justice, and actively reflecting the image of God by developing and deploying our God-given talents in ways that are consistent with His Word and nature. We need to see history as a larger story about a yesterday we are called to remember, so we may more clearly understand today and effectively lay good foundations for tomorrow in accordance to God's plan of renewal.